Hey everyone, my name is Thomas, and today I let 5 LLMs play 1,000 hands of Blackjack to see who would have the highest accuracy when compared with optimal play. So I also shipped this nifty little UI so you can play in real time to see what an LLM would say for your hand. So in this case, as you can see, the LLM says the hit, optimal play says the hit, I'm gonna hit, and then now I'm probably going to stand at 19 and we win. And so this was just really inspired by some of the benchmarks out there, and I wanted to have some sort of ground truth. And that ground truth in this case was that optimal play. Fair warning, I didn't do any type of card counting. While this may be fruitful in the future, I just kind of skipped over that requirement for now. I just wanted to go strictly with the ground truth. And because I like to nerd out on the tech, really it's just 2 primary files here that you have to concern yourself with. And this repository will be completely open and free for anyone to use. But I have a FastAPI here, and all I'm doing is serving Jinja 2 templates using HTMX. And for those that aren't familiar with HTMX, it's really just a way to serve components from your backend without having to think about that JavaScript and DOM manipulation. So it is a form of server-side rendering. And what exactly do I mean here? You'll see that my index page loads index.html. So if we pop open that bad boy, we can see there's some preliminary styling, but really this container and this game area is where the magic is. And I include any of the game states here. If the game.playerHands, meaning does the player have an active hand, it's going to iterate through the cards and show them programmatically. But these Jinja 2 templates will be re-rendered when the button is clicked. So because I'm using HTMX, I didn't have to do any type of manipulation with JavaScript. So if we scroll down to show you what I'm talking about, I'm using these hxpost attributes, which is a part of the library of HTMX. And whenever you click on this button of deal, it's going to hit the /deal route. So if we look at the API to see what is served, I just render the partial /game.html again, and I provide the request and the game itself. So it'll re-render the state based on what I'm passing in. And this goes for the same with the other ones. There's /double, /split, as well as /surrender. And sometimes these buttons won't even be loaded if the game state does not actually say that you can do a surrender or a split. And then we also have the Blackjack engine, which is the core component of this as well. So you have the API serving the templates, and then you have Blackjack, which is the game engine. And so you'll see here, I do pass in a 6-deck shoe. And this can be seeded so that we can reuse the same decks over and over again with each trial. And you'll see in the results how that actually works. And I do everything that I would think a casino would do. In fact, I went ahead and just added this rules.md just to showcase what we're talking about. We have a 6-deck shoe. This means that 6 decks will be used in a larger shoe. The dealer stands on soft 17, meaning that if they hit their 17 in their cards, they'll stand. Blackjack will pay 3-2, meaning they'll actually get 1.5 units if they get Blackjack. Double down is allowed on any of the 2 cards, so it's not just on the first. Double after split is allowed, so some casinos don't allow this, but I'm saying we can have the option to split after we have doubled. We can split any 2 cards of equal value, so 10, Jack, King, Queen are all roughly equivalent in this case. There is no resplitting. I only allowed 1 split. Some casino variants will allow you to split on a split. This is not the case here. Only 1 card dealt to split aces, so if you have aces and you choose the split, you only draw 1 card for each of those 2 hands. The dealer will peak for Blackjack, and the round will end immediately if either player or dealer has Blackjack. And then 21 on split aces is not Blackjack. So if you happen to split those 2 aces and then you get 2 separate Blackjacks, they're not necessarily considered Blackjack. You just hit 21. And that only pays 1-to-1 on each hand if you win, not if you, of course, if you tie against the dealer. And then the scoring system here is just a plus-minus system where if you win, it's +1. If you lose, it's -1. A push is nothing. A Blackjack is actually 1.5. A surrender is half of a point loss. And then if you do double hands, that's double the result. And so hopefully that makes sense for what was being scored and what's being evaluated here. So let's go ahead and dive into the data a little bit. So I went ahead and used Plotly and let the LLM generate this nice little website for us here. And so you'll notice the LM Blackjack benchmark, we played 1,000 hands, tested 5 models, and the highest being the latest Gemini 3 flash model that just came out today. And we're sitting at 98.2% accuracy when compared with optimal strategy. That is a huge leap from both Claude Opus 4.5 as well as GPT 5.2. And I ran all of these just using my own credits, so I had to be a little bit mindful of the hands. While I acknowledge that 1,000 may not be all inclusive of the full data set that they could have produced, I had to be a little bit mindful of the limits here. And so if we see the balance after 1,000 hands, GPT-4o got crushed, absolutely got annihilated, minus 63, whereas Claude Sonnet 4.5 minus 13, and then we start getting into the positives. So Opus 4.5 coming out at 12.5, Gemini 3 Flash actually still pretty profitable. Even though it was 98.2% accurate, it wasn't as profitable as GPT 5.2 coming at 25. In the data set, there was this idea of mistakes and what they did wrong, or like what did they not do that would have been optimal. And this is showcasing these model by model. So if we look here on the over doubling, GPT-4o mini was absolutely reckless. It would over double all the time, meaning it would double down when it's not supposed to. And then conversely, we see the under double where it didn't double enough, and we see that Claude Opus was a little bit more conservative than the remainder of the models. Then we see over surrendering. I would call this the defeatist. GPT 5.2 just would 100%, nope, I'm good. Wouldn't even take a chance, would just surrender. And because of this surrendering, it looks like it still came up on top. So maybe it's figuring out something that we don't know, right? So I see on the under surrender that GPT 5.2 didn't even appear, so it never under surrendered. It would always surrender. And we see that GPT-4o mini, once again, this kind of goes along with this over doubling. It is the most reckless. And then the hit stand confusion was a little bit closely tied between these three models, but GPT 5.2 being less confused here. And then split errors, it looks like GPT-4o mini, the reckless degenerate gambler, is splitting, over doubling, being confused when the hit. It's your drunk friend at the casino effectively. And then if we look down here, we see this nice little chart that kind of shows us the dimensions of each one. I think I can go ahead and hide the majority of these and kind of go one by one. So GPT-4o mini, we can see here over doubling was its absolute weakness. It did not care about its bank balance. We see here, like we mentioned before, GPT 5.2 looks like a little bit of a defeatist where it would over surrender. Let's look at Claude Sonnet 4.5. Oh, a little bit all over the place. It would over double, it would under double, it would hit too much. Claude Sonnet 4.5 was having a bad day. Claude Opus 4.5, it hit too much and it under doubled. So it got a little bit confused in the sauce here, and I guess we see that here as well. Yep, the hit stand confusion, but it did under double a lot. And finally, let's look at Gemini 3 Flash. Wow, the only weakness Gemini 3 Flash had was that it over surrendered. So it's a little bit too conservative for its own good. And we see that reflected here on the over surrender. In fact, that was its only weakness. It was pretty low when compared to everything else. So then at the bottom, I went ahead and added this idea of by hand value. So at what point would it start screwing up? And Gemini 3 Flash, the only thing it really got wrong was right around that 14 value mark. And I guess this is where it would surrender, is right around that 14. I bet you that if you said, hey, I'm 14, don't surrender, my guy, then maybe you could actually prompt away this inaccuracy. And so I see that GPT-4o mini a little bit all over the place, GPT 5.2 kind of in line with Gemini 3 a little bit here, except of course has more variance on the left and the right of the 14. Then we see here Claude Opus 4.5 as well as Claude Sonnet, kind of similar here. So lastly, I just want to showcase how this LLM says works. So let me go ahead and follow through with this hand. I went ahead and hit, and you see this skeleton loader, and then it says what the LLM wants you to do. So in this case, I'm actually doing an HX trigger load, meaning when the page loads, we're going to swap the outer HTML with the response from the LLM. And then while we're here, it's going to have a skeleton text. And so that API call, so if we search for LLM, all it does is do the get recommendation. And I am using asynchronous functions here, so I await this response. And right here, if the round is not active or if it's not the current hand, we go ahead and return none. Otherwise, we go ahead and build the prompt. And like I mentioned before, we do some things, we grab the actions that it has, and then I format this prompt template. And so to show you how weak this prompt is, it's literally just your hand with the hand value, dealer shows, dealer up card, available actions, and here are the available actions you have. What is the optimal play? And similarly on /optimal, I call this get optimal play, which really all I did was encode what the optimal strategy should be based on cards that I found online. And you'll see here like 21 and these S's stand for stand, hits, doubles, etc. But this was just a very easy way to encode optimal and then have it displayed there against the LM if you wanted to play it iteratively. So hopefully you guys did find enjoyment in this video. I had fun building this eval. All the data sets, all the visualizations, and everything will be inside the repository, and I'll link it down down below. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure to go ahead and drop that subscription as well as drop a like on this video. Everything helps, even if you just watched this and just enjoyed it. This is going to be one of my evals going forward, at least until LLMs can reliably hit that 100% mark on the optimal strategy. Genuinely, I was very surprised that Gemini Flash 3.0 absolutely crushed it and defeated all the prior benchmarks that I'd ran, which was absolutely surprising. It was a fraction of the cost. That's the crazy part. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Peace.